Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, this is Pugiono from Rumah Resiliensi Indonesia, being held in Bali, Indonesia, in conjunction with the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction, the 7th session 2022. We're very privileged now to have Jess, our colleague from Humanitarian Advisory Group, with us for a couple of minutes, and soon I will ask her to introduce herself and what she's doing. And I would like to discuss with her of the initiative that HAG has been initiating for a couple of years now, that is transitioning to the next phase. Yes, welcome to the Rumah Resiliensi Indonesia.
Thank you.
And I understand you just completed a session just now.
Yes.
Right.
So completed a great session with colleagues from Pugiono Centre, from Muhammadiyah, from Save the Children Indonesia, and from PLAN.
Excellent. So why don't you now, it takes a little bit of time to introduce yourself and introduce Humanitarian Advisory Group.
Yes, sure. So my name is Jessica Lees and I'm an executive working at an organisation called Humanitarian Advisory Group. We are a social enterprise organisation that is primarily based out of Melbourne, Australia, but we do have, in this new world order that we've all come into with COVID, we do have colleagues who work all around Asia and the Pacific. We are an organisation that focuses on research, policy and technical advisory for humanitarian stakeholders, amongst other services, and core to the way that we operate is that we are a localised organisation in terms of our research. So whenever we do research, we work with local partners and national contractors on the ground to be able to support our data collection processes as well as the analysis and write-up of our research findings.
Right. Now, for coming couple of minutes, I would like to discuss with you this so-called Humanitarian Horizon, right? And briefly, would you explain what is Humanitarian Horizon, what have been happening, and what have you been doing with Humanitarian Horizon?
Good question. Where to start? So Humanitarian Horizons is our flagship research program. So
and this is funded by?
It's funded by the Australian government by DFAT. Mm-hmm. We initially had a research program which finished in 2020, which had a few different areas of focus. One of them was on diversity and leadership in the humanitarian sector. Another was on localisation, and another research stream, we called it, focuses on real-time analysis and influence, which is looking at real-time humanitarian responses and issues that are relevant for the sector, and being able to turn around some rapid analysis to be able to support stakeholders at a time that is relevant for them to be able to inform their operations. At the moment, we've now entered the new phase of Humanitarian Horizons. So we have three different research
before you
streams.
get there, though, yes. So before you move to the next phase, maybe you'd like to share. I understand in your presentation just now that you work with Pugiono Centre in Indonesia. Just a couple of words about those things before we move to the next phase.
Yes, so can we call it a long-standing partnership with Pugiono Centre?
Long-sitting or long-standing doesn't really matter. A long friend, as it is.
But we've been organisational friends for several years now. We've gone through what I think is a pretty amazing journey, where we started working with Pugiono Centre on a couple of bespoke pieces of research where we contracted the organisation to work in partnership with us on a few projects. The first one was looking at localisation in the Sulawesi earthquake response. And then we went through this amazing transition where the Pugiono Centre then actually contracted us. So we were the subcontracted organisation in the partnership to support Pugiono Centre doing another study on localisation, which was funded by the DRA. And then we've engaged on a few other different projects together and gotten to a point now where we're long-standing institutional partners. So we have a long-standing arrangement that is guided by a series of core principles that we have all agreed to, and that is the foundation of the way that we work together.
I guess for fairness, I could add a little bit, being the Pugiono Centre, an organization that happened to have the same name like my name.
Please do. Enrich it.
Right. That we did really have this cooperation on research, but very importantly, that research was tried to identify where Indonesia, civil society and government stands with regard to humanitarian reform, where it counts on the ground. Not humanitarian reform as defined globally or what, but how does it really hit us and matter to us on the ground. They talk about coordination, about resources, accountability, and capacity, right? Not surprisingly, very parallel with international and global, but this really breathes the local realities. And out of that, in Indonesia, it's spin-off actually from our research of HAK and Pugiono Centre into the, among others, establishment of the Indonesian Alliance of Development and Humanitarian. This is a major step thanks to the Humanitarian Horizon. Now, on that note, this is the time now to tell us and to share with us the transition to the next phase, right? So what the next phase going to look like, what's going to change, and then what's going to happen?
Just before I do touch on the next phase, I just wanted to again come back to that the Blueprint for Change initiative that you were just talking about, Puji, because I think that that's something that is really important for people to understand the approach. So I guess the hypothesis was that there's a lot of energy and a lot of emphasis and attention to humanitarian reform at the global level, but what does that actually mean in an individual context? So that's why we undertook that piece of work, which was trying to understand what humanitarian reform actually means and could look like in a country context where it's being driven by Indonesian stakeholders and guided by some sense of what is happening at the global level, but not being dictated by that global level. So then to come to your question around the next phase, so Humanitarian Horizons is transitioning. We have a few different research streams still. One of them is called People Power and Local Leadership, which is really looking at interrogating a lot of the issues around, it deals with issues of localisation, of power dynamics, of the colonial nature of the humanitarian system, and tries to really understand what needs to happen in the system to make the system more equitable and really uncover what some of those deeply entrenched barriers are. Another one of the research streams is actually looking at the environmental impact of humanitarian action. So this is a really new area for us, but something that's really excited about because we are, as individuals and organisation, also very passionate about climate change in the environment and the need to be able to do something about that. So Greening the System is trying to support the humanitarian sector to measurably mitigate and reduce negative environmental impacts that come from humanitarian action, things like logistics, waste, carbon emissions and those sorts of things. And then finally, we have a very strong emphasis on government governance, accountability and our core institutional partnerships, as well as that research stream which looks at identifying real-time issues for humanitarian stakeholders and being able to rapidly analyse and throw back into the sector some useful evidence to be able to support improved practices and operations.
Right. Now, just to add to that, I think it's rather exemplary, right? The way we built the partnership with HAK. Number one is that, as it was said earlier, the relationship is not really a subcontracting as such. Humanitarian Advisory Group and Pugiono Centre are having two-way capacity building, in which HAK would rely on Pugiono Centre on certain things. Pugiono Centre benefited from HAK's expertise and competence in organizational, institutional development, financing management, and so on. So it's not really a task-oriented partnership. It's more of a more wholesome relationship, I suppose. Second, in the course of doing the Blueprint for Change research, HAK and Pugiono Centre, together with other colleagues in Indonesia, actually documented the history of humanitarian movement in Indonesia from as long as we could remember, right? And the milestonic disastrous crisis events and how those events triggered humanitarian posture changes. And that clearly very important because it then gave real context to the current and ongoing humanitarian reform, right? Now, an interesting question to ask is this. Humanitarian Advisory Group, right? Count yourself a global south, right? But you're uniquely positioned because you are not like every one of us, like from Nepal or Malaysia or Indonesia. You're Australian, right? This is not only a matter of identity, but the interesting question, how do you leverage that uniqueness of HAK? One, being professional research and advocacy. Number two, being positioned uniquely as Asian, but you have a direct and perhaps easier access to the global setup?
So I think that the way, as I said, a core part of the way that HAG works and always has worked is leveraging the skills and capacities of local and national partners and individuals. So that is a core part of the way. Even before the localisation debate was something that was in the spirit, it's just part of how we believe that the work should be done. We don't necessarily need to always be flying everywhere as internationals and doing things where then...
And you may not call it localisation then, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. So we really believe that the skills and the capacities are already there, and that we have the opportunity to be able to support where there is a need to strengthen capacity, and we have the skills to be able to fill that gap. But as you said, we also acknowledge that there are a whole range of different areas that we can benefit from our partners as well, and we're really open to learning and developing and ensuring that we're contextually relevant as well. So we couldn't do half of the work that we do without our national research partners, because we just don't have the relevant contextual understanding and nuance, and being able to understand what the political environment is.
Right.
So I see it as really a mutually reinforcing relationship, and I think that that's a really important way that and it's not about positioning ourselves, right? It's just about our belief that that's the way that we believe everybody should be practicing. So I think that that's part of it, and we're an organisation that focuses on Asia and the Pacific, and that's just because that's where obviously we're geographically aligned. It's where a lot of our partner organisations also are focused, and we can't spread ourselves too thin. So we're able to, I think, bring a lot of the global conversations that we're connected into, and ensure that they are conversations that are also being had in the region, and that they're also contextualized and contextually relevant. So it's not, and this is what we've applied in the blueprint for change research as well as our localization research. It's not just a cookie cutter model. Everything needs to be contextualized, so we can help to maybe bridge that in some ways.
And at time come out with practical tools as well, like these indicators for localization was found by a colleague in Bangladesh as very, very useful to help them assess where they are in the trajectory and journey towards localization. Now, I have a $6 million question for you.
That's a lot of million. Okay.
Right.
I hope that I don't disappoint.
No. In September, Jess, there will be Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference out of all places in the world in Brisbane, right, in Australia. And you happen to be from that neighborhood, right? Now, having this intimate and close and professional relationship with the Global South civil society, how would you leverage that conference in Brisbane to advance our collective agenda?
Yeah. And this is something that is definitely on our agenda at the moment. We're discussing as an organisation what is the best way to be able to bring as many of our partners from the region together to be able to have some of these discussions in a really meaningful way. And the Brisbane conference is a fantastic opportunity. It's a really high profile event in the region. It's being supported by the Australian government, and it gives us the opportunity to be able to bring these core research partners together to be able to leverage that network and use the conference as a venue and an opportunity to do so. So definitely something that we're planning.
Right. And September is not far away from now. This is May, June, July, only 5 months to go. What are 3 things that HAG would do from now until September to make sure that what you plan to do will actually happen?
Yes. So
do you plan to meet with us, or you plan to organize a pre-conference meeting, or what's on the offering?
So definitely. So I think that there's a couple of different things in train. The first one is securing the spots that we're looking to secure. So one of our colleagues has been liaising very frequently with the people who are organising the conference to ensure we've got the right mix of people at the right events. So that's number one, is being able to have the right sessions available. And then once we are confirmed, I think it will definitely be around liaising with our partners to be able to ensure that people are
shaping the agenda.
Exactly,
and all that,
shaping the agenda, because we do all of these things in a way that is as participatory as possible. So that is number 2. And then 3, I guess, is all of the logistics of making
Yes,
sure that
yes.
everybody can get there,
Right,
because
right,
I
right.
know it's not always the easiest thing to be able to
Right.
do.
So, colleagues, in brief, this is Jess Lees from Humanitarian Advisory Group. We have been talking about what they're doing, where it's heading, and connecting the global platform today with the ministerial conference in Brisbane in September. Jess, thank you very much for having
My
your time with
pleasure.
us.
Thank you as always, Puji. Thanks for
All
having
right,
me.
and this is Pugiono from Rumah Resiliensi Indonesia. Thank you for now, and I'll see you in the next interview. Thank you.